And welcome back to Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar, episode 6. All right, strap in. This is going to be a long one. And first of all, shout out to my main man Ronnie. We'll put both of his accounts here. But 1989 Aerostar. He has a wonderful, obviously, 1989 Aerostar. He does all sorts of cool things with it. He's also got some excellent, really cool like sweatshirts and patches and stuff. So check him out and buy a little cute Aerostar sticker for yourself. So he sent me this, and first things first, it's a Craigslist post, not a Facebook Marketplace post. So right off the bat, I really love that. Now I will say I think Facebook Marketplace is kind of taking over Craigslist and the classifieds thing, but I think in smaller areas that's even more prevalent. Like where I live in a small town, Craigslist has seemingly like really dried up, especially when it comes to like local areas, and Facebook Marketplace has taken over. Now maybe Craigslist is still more viable in larger areas. Just a hypothesis. I don't know if there's anything to that, but certainly the wider you search, the more you'll find. And in this case, we are in Tacoma, Washington, with a stunning, breathtaking, really gold 1993 Aerostar. Now this is a real unique one because it is a regular non-extended edition that is also all-wheel drive. Now this is an extremely rare combination. The vast majority of Aerostars, now I don't have any numbers to back this up, but from a pretty extensive classifieds addiction to looking at Ford Aerostars, the vast majority of the all-wheel drive models are the extended length version. Now that kind of makes sense in a way. A lot of them were passenger minivans, you know, and carrying kids around, and you want all-wheel drive. Still, I would argue an underserved market today in the van category, although lots of minivans do have all-wheel drive now. But be that as it may, first, I mean, the looks of this thing, it's really, really stunning. We'll go through a couple pictures, then we'll get up to the description. But first of all, and I'm actually going to message the seller because I've always wanted to get my hands on one of these like front lip spoilers. I think they are rather above, you know, roof spoilers. I'm not sure if there's an aftermarket job. I've tried to find these online. I'm sure they made them at one point, you know, probably back in the 80s and 90s. But this thing is such a rare piece, and it looks like it fits on there really, really nice. Now I would maybe go painted, body color painted, but it certainly does look good because there's all this black trim. Now maybe I haven't said this too much on the channel, but I am not a big fan of rear spoilers on almost any car. Very, very few exceptions. I remember my buddy used to have an old, just total, you know, POS Chevy Cavalier, a very wonderful janky car, but you know, a little long in the tooth. And we used to look up aftermarket spoilers on eBay, and they would always say, "Oh, improves, you know, downforce at high speeds," which was just, you know, very funny to consider, you know, improving the race car-like dynamics of, you know, whatever, a 1988 Chevy Cavalier. Neither here nor there. It's a well-worn, you know, appendage and like sort of automotive sort of add-ons, and stylistically I actually don't think it looks bad on Aerostar. Ironically, I think vans, even though it's like the least practical use of a spoiler, actually look great with rear spoilers. So no shade, I think it looks great, but you know, I really am generally not a rear spoiler person. But I think the black accents look great with your nice black sort of center little plastic beauty strip here. Also, it's hard to see, but a wonderful little gradient pinstripe. This is a very New Orleans Saints car, you know? And then your black mirrors, your black, you know, moldings, your black door handles, your black four-wheel drive badging, and of course your beautiful black steel wheels. And of course, huge steel wheels fan here. And then your black bumpers, and it looks like we'll have to see some other pictures of these headlight bezels. May be chrome, but they may just be black too. Now, why this van is so interesting to me is because, so obviously you can see the panel is on here, so it looks to be like a cargo version of the van, but in the back it does have the lift gate and not the barn doors. These were available with barn doors on their cargo versions. But the cool thing about the Aerostar is there's so many different variations. So I'm willing to bet they may have made like a panel van that had a lift gate instead of barn doors. That's not without out of the realm of possibility that they might have made that. Because if this was a custom job, it was really, really well done, putting these metal panels in here. And I have seen this on cargo editions too. It's just sort of like, you know, secondary window that they put in here that's not what you would call a stock Aerostar window, but this may have been factory, where they put in a little window just for a little light here, and it's like kind of a cargo setup, but with your rear hatch liftgate. You can see more of this beautiful little spectrum pinstriping down here, where they go, you know, fatter to thinner on the little pattern there. Really, really beautiful. You'll notice a little bit of rear bumper damage, and unfortunately these bumpers, especially as they age, are pretty brittle, and they're harder and harder to find, especially the rear ones. But just an absolutely gorgeous van, very tastefully done. Now these don't look stock per se, these little bucket seats, but one of my two 1986 Aerostars that I eventually sold my good buddy Evan, he's done some really cool things in that, eventually we'll get it on the channel, is Ford did have these kind of like, especially in their cargo version vans, had these kind of like bucket seats. They almost like little like sports car seats from an old Fiat or, you know, Alfa Romeo or something like that. Probably not the safest or best side bolstered, but they're little like sports car bucket seats. So that makes me think it's kind of like more of a cargo version too. I don't know if these seats are original, maybe they were put in, but they look like they could be one style of the original Aerostar seat, but I didn't know they made those into 93. I thought that was more of the first generation. Now we have the blacked out grille, and again, this one, I think you did see some cargo Aerostars that did have the black unpainted plastic grille treatment, as opposed to like a silver plastic grille treatment, or on some sport models the body colored grills. And it looks like these bezels are painted black. Now that may have done after the fact, but I don't know, it could be one of these really rare specifications. Who knows, maybe it was custom ordered with, you know, regular wheelbase, non-extended, I shouldn't say wheelbase, regular length, non-extended, sort of the cargo bare bones. Because the other clue in this, when we get into the interior, only 98,000 original miles is, and we'll talk about this in a second, but you have crank windows. So another, you know, seemingly kind of cargo-esque feature in here. So a really, really cool sort of configuration out there. This is definitely not stock. This is like a aftermarket bucket seat, which or captain's chair, I guess you'd call it, which they stuck in here. So that's nice. And we'll get into the interior more as we read the description. So, of course, 93, one of my favorite years of Aerostars. Selling my 1993 Aerostar, hate to see it go. Well, that's nice to hear first off the bat. We like that Aerostars are appreciated by their owners, but I'm looking for something a little sportier. Now here's where you stop me, because, you know, you could upgrade to a Ford Aerostar Sport. They did make a Sport edition, as we saw a couple episodes ago. Now, obviously, he probably means more in like handling and dynamics, he or she, I should say, or they. But I would argue that, you know, the Aerostar is, as we hear the dogs start to get excited, is quite the sporty little vehicle itself. Now, if you're going to have a camper, it's hard to find a quote-unquote sporty camper as it is. So, but, you know, plausible, and maybe they're just ready to move on to something else. So I can't justify the insurance cost for two vehicles. Fair enough. Now, I would say you could put this on a classic car policy, such as Hagerty, and you could probably get this thing insured for very cheap. Plus, they have free 24/7 roadside assistance if you get their driver's club. Not sponsored by Hagerty, although Hagerty, if you want to sponsor me, go right ahead and send a message. So, this van is extremely capable. It is all-wheel drive model and does very well in rain or snow. Plenty of room for any manner of toys in the back. Like, and you know, that's versatility to a key. They're playing right into it. I custom built the folding storage in the back so that you could easily put multiple bikes, snowboards, skis, or any other gear in there. And then once you get to where you're going, the shelving flips down into a massive bunk that can comfortably sleep two people. The bunk is 6'8" on the driver's side, so it's perfect for taller people. Double layered insulation on the steel panel keeps it warm enough to sleep in for some trailhead camping. Now he says here, here's a rundown of the work that I've done the last 2,000 miles and what's still missing. But before that, let's take some more look at the interior of it to see kind of what they're talking about here. Now this is kind of genius because it's this nice shelving right? And so you have double layered shelving, but then you see all these just like door hinges, so the whole thing will flip down and become a bed. Now it'd be kind of hard to carry that third chair in there if you're turning this into a bed, but you still have the option, which is nice. So there you can see it flip down, and obviously because they have this little tank there, the driver's side 6'8" apparently is a little longer, and 6'8", you know, in a pretty small van. I don't have the numbers of the overall length of the regular size Aerostar, but you know, 119-inch wheelbase. That's pretty darn roomy back there. So a pretty cool design that this individual has put into their Aerostar. So the good, brand new tires and wheels of less than 2K, went up from a 14-inch wheel to a 15-inch, so that you'll actually be able to find tires for it when these ones wear out. I don't know how hard it is to find a 14. I mean, I have to find 13-inch wheels for my Fiat X19, so maybe I'm you know, already a little preconditioned. But anyways, certainly a 15-inch wheel and tire looks very good on this vehicle. So flush and replace almost every fluid and filter in the thing, including oil and filter, fuel filter, air filter, coolant, transfer case fluid, front and rear differential fluid, power steering fluid, brake fluid, new O2 sensor, new throttle position sensor, front brake pads, new thermostat, IAC valve, fully rebuilt rear brakes, including hardware and wheel cylinders. There's going to be drum brakes in the rear. New PCV valve, new wipers. Previous owner refreshed the top end with new gaskets, spark plugs, leads, and coil pack, all within the last 10,000 miles. Wow. Not so good. Radio doesn't have power, and there are no speakers in the van. Well, this sounds like a, you know, one of them vehicles you buy and then go on like a super contemplative walkabout or vanabout or Aerostar about, as it were. And maybe you just want to sort of meditate the whole time, and you don't want, you know, distractions like podcasts and music and stuff like that. It's almost 30 years old, so there are a couple small dings and dents. Pretty immaculate looking van, I gotta say. The window and door seals are showing their age, a common Aerostar problem, common problem with any car from, you know, the 80s or before. And there's a very small drip that comes from the top of the windshield. Yeah, I've been there. Airbag light is on, flashing at code 52. This indicates no power to the controller. Could be an inline fuse or something. Truthfully, I haven't put too much time into troubleshooting it because I don't expect 30-year-old airbags to do so much good anyways. Now, this is a great comment. And this is what I love about Craigslist posts. This is why I used to do a series Aerostars of Craigslist. You know, I want to go on sort of like a philosophical wormhole here and talk about like the concept of it. It's a very American concept of being slaves to convenience, where, you know, it's this great irony of things are so convenient, yet we get so dependent on them. And you could, you know, parlay that into supply chains built for expediency rather than robustness, yada, yada, yada. But generally, I find Craigslist posts to be a little bit more you know, robust and thoughtful, and they put some time into it. Now, clearly, this is an expensive vehicle. This is being sold for asking prices $9,000, which is definitely at the higher end for an Aerostar, for a 30-year-old, you know, van. But I just really appreciate when a seller puts a lot of time and effort into their post, because it indicates the time and effort they put into everything else, including the vehicle that you're potentially buying. So you're really sussing out the seller as much as you are the vehicle. Of course, I find that on Facebook Marketplace, there's so many shortcuts you can take, and so that people do take them. And I don't know if it's an indication of our culture. It's a, you know, a pretty broad, maybe myopic or too generalized look at something. Either zooming in too much or zooming out too much. But there you have it. I just really appreciated that line. You know, there's certain, like, you know, Craigslist posts you can like sort of turn, you can look at as modern art, and there's different like subgenres and niches within that. I don't expect 30-year-old airbags to do so much good, to do too much good anyway. So that's kind of funny. Overall, this is a super simple, solid engine with a lot of life left in it. So this is the 4.0. That's another crazy thing about this van. It's the 4.0, which were much rarer than the 3.0. So it's just, I have a feeling that probably most of the all-wheel drive versions came with the 4.0. It's just a little bit beefier, but I'm not sure about that. If you do know, please clue me in. The 4-liter that they used in 1993 is awesome because it has much fewer moving parts and simpler design than the 4.0 that Ford implemented a couple years later. Fuel economy is very respectable considering the age of the vehicle, 16 city, 19 to 20 on the highway if you keep it at a reasonable speed. Now, keep in mind this is an all-wheel drive, so you're going to get a little bit probably worse mileage than, you know, the regular rear-wheel drive models. So, you know, realistically, you're probably getting about 18, which is respectable. It's not great, especially for a gasoline-powered vehicle. And that is something that you want to keep in mind. But, you know, by the same token, for an all-wheel drive vehicle, that's a truck that you can camp in and sleep in and take all this stuff on, like when you're talking about, like, you know, a big F-150 or something, especially older ones, you know, 20 miles a gallon, 18, 20 miles a gallon is respectable. I think that's the right word there. Mileage will continue to go up as this is still my daily driver. Please email to contact me. Cash is preferred, willing to meet at a bank or DOL. Thanks. Well, thank you for posting this wonderful, wonderful Aerostar. Let's just go back and look at some of these pictures again. I really do have to get your little kind of chrome accent pieces on the wheel wells. I believe that was factory. It looks like you have a little dings and dents, especially where your jacking points are. It's very common on these for the jacking points to sort of like crumple over time. I do love the placement of the gas door, and it's just this perfect little circle in a, you know, world of angles. All the styling is so has so much continuity and so much cohesiveness and just enough tension with your angles sort of, you know, going against themselves. You have all this rearward motion in the back, and you have all this forward motion in the front, and it's just perfectly split up with this door line, which is a perfectly vertical line running the entire length of the vehicle. And then you have this sort of, I don't want to say kind of like negative space, but kind of like an asymmetrical symmetry, if that makes sense, where this side is much longer, the rear of the vehicle, but the front of the vehicle is more drastically angled. So the imbalance of those two things is balanced out by the fact that they are imbalanced in their own way in a perfectly balanced way, if that makes sense in totality. So that's a little bit of like highbrow Aerostar aesthetics critique. So obviously 93, you're into the quote-unquote second generation or facelifted interior. It's pretty bare bones, but it's a little bit more modernized, and it definitely seems like it probably, you're probably going to get less speedometer and gauge failure and things of that nature in these later ones. Only thing I'll say is for $9,000, I feel like maybe this, you know, insulation, we can tighten that up a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, I very much appreciate everything that's been done to this vehicle, but it doesn't maybe look like a quote-unquote professional install job. It's certainly better than I could do, you know, no shade. But, you know, again, for a $9,000 Aerostar, looks like your struts are working just good. You have your beautiful taillights with your ambers in them, which I have to say I prefer. Actually, the seals look pretty good just from, you know, from pictures. And you have that, obviously, that little ding in the bumper, so good luck getting another one of those. But holy shnikes, I mean, what a great car. Now here on this little close-up, we can maybe see a little, that little pinstripe. Looks like it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, a little five-line design. And again, the black and gold, just absolutely incredible. A single sliding door. I don't think they ever made an Aerostar with a dual sliding door. That was sort of the next generation of minivans that started to offer that option, but just as well here. You know, you don't have to mess with it over here, and you can put your insulation a little further down and more privacy and all that. So just absolutely, the black and tan. I always talk about black and tan interiors. I love a black and tan. And again, you know, your plastic body panels, this is, you know, it's funny because the Aerostar is indicative of the Ford styling of the time, you know, writ large, but at the same time, it almost looks striking on an Aerostar because, you know, the Ford in general, like the Taurus went from this sleek angular design, and then of course it became very curved and bubbly, and I like both designs very much, but the bubbliness was starting to sort of appear on the interiors, I'm sorry, more than the exteriors, at least at first. And this like nice rounded dashboard here with this nice line that kind of like balances out your gauge cluster, and then it's like this nice HVAC controls very nicely integrated into there. Sure, it's like a cheap piece of plastic, but it's funny when you look at the first generation Aerostar or first, you know, pre-facelift interior, this is actually miles ahead in sort of the fit and finish and, you know, the sort of roundedness as opposed to like squareness of it. So just a really, really great looking interior. Of course, you still have your dog door here to get into the internals of the engine because it is so close to the driver compartment. You have your newer style steering wheel here with the great horn buttons on the side. And boy, a tan interior with just some black accents is very beautiful. I do have to do some more research on these center consoles because I can't tell. Maybe it was just the post facelift ones that got like a factory center console, but certainly very nice to have that. It looks like you got 4 cup holders between the two things. You have your cigarette lighter, a 12-volt adapter there. It looks like maybe an aftermarket stereo system, but as we know, the stereo doesn't work. And I love this little, shifter boot over the column shifter, which is just like a nice little semi-luxury touch. So overall, boy, just really, really stunning. Again, your crank windows with your black plastic handle, just another black accent on there. This fact that there's like nothing but gold and black on this, and gold certainly. You see like a lot of white and black. That's like a common very nice high contrast ratio, but black and gold really just an underrated color combination. And along your cowl here, your wipers, and your sort of miniature side mirrors. Now this is the one feature I would think on a cargo Aerostar you might have your truck mirrors here, but they may have also as the Aerostar sort of was marketed more as a van and less of a truck as it went on. Your tow mirrors here may have gotten replaced even on cargo versions. So very, very curious, and a very, very unique iteration of the Aerostar. Your electronic 4-wheel drive here, which was, you hear people advertise it, and of course they're going to say it's good in the rain and the snow, but I actually have heard pretty good things. Now this isn't like necessarily a truck full 4-wheel drive system. I believe it's more like sort of a Subaru system or sort of a modern all-wheel drive system. I'm not sure exactly how Subaru symmetrical all-wheel drive works, but where the computer would sense slip in a certain tire and it would send power there. I'm not sure if there was a limited percentage of the power it would send there. I will have to do a little bit more research on the electronic 4-wheel drive system, and maybe next time we do a 4-wheel drive model. And it's funny because they do call it 4-wheel drive, and I know there's this big rift between 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, not the same thing. So technically this probably was more like an all-wheel drive system, but when it was introduced, the Ford is sort of like a truck as much as it is a van. So I suppose they can get away with that. And functionally you're getting power to all 4 wheels when you need grip. So in essence now this is a very interesting angle here. You don't see this angle on the Aerostar a lot, where it almost resembles like a Toyota van on that front. You really see the nose dip down. You realize even though it is a very angular vehicle, it does have its curves in it. Namely this big swoop here, which sort of goes from one direction towards the other angular direction, but instead of taking an angular dip, it actually takes a very nice gradual swooping dip, and just a perfect line. Then you see your front tiny little triangle window cut out there, which is lovely and helps with visibility. That does angle down as well, so almost like in parallel to this line, even though one's a little straighter and the other's a little bit more curved. But just one of those little angles. There's not a bad angle. Not a bad line on this car. There's not a wrong angle to look at this car from. It always looks good, and there's a wonderful, wonderful shot of it right there. Sort of a menacing and a friendly face all at the same time. It's like that Chaka Khan song, "I'm Every Woman," that Oprah used. This is like, I'm every car. I'm every vehicle imaginable, all in one package. And that's sort of what the Aerostar is. It's just the most versatile vehicle ever. And the greatest vehicle ever, I would say. So, been a little bit long. I wanted to sort of wax poetic on this one. I got to email the seller and see what they know about that roof spoiler, because that is really, really beautiful. So here we have a 1993 Ford Aerostar, regular length, all-wheel drive in Tacoma, Washington for $9,000, which, looking at vehicle prices, what they are, it's really not an unfair ask, especially with all the maintenance that's been done to it. I mean, you know, you're going to save yourself thousands of dollars doing all that routine maintenance because it's already been done. So I think not actually an unfair price to ask. Certainly, you have to find the right buyer. But boy, I hope somebody scoops this up, excuse me, and takes care of it and continues to give it the stellar maintenance that this current owner has given it. Really, just a beautiful, beautiful machine, and under 100,000 miles, which is very, very low as well. So there you have it. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks again to Ronnie, 1989 Aerostar. Really appreciate it. And until next time, Janky do Thanky.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.